Almost. Major. Holy fucking shit, this is major! Welcome to another episode of Almost Major, where we talk about the many major studios and the films they released. And today we are talking about the documentary, The Eyes of Tammy Faye from 2000. I am Kevin Tudor. I'm here with Charlie Nash.
Hello.
And Bryden Doyle.
Hello.
And we have a super special returning guest. It is Jack Draper. How are you?
You couldn't get him again, and this is the best we could do.
He's a busy man. He's watching 9 basketball games all at once right now.
Yep. There's 2 monitors, the National Basketball Association, and the other one is just Tulsa King. That's it. Anything that's...
He's like that guy in a Grandma's Boy where he has that lay down chair with the big monitor.
Exactly.
That's just him with NBA Live.
A third is in consideration.
It's like the bit in the first season of New Girl where Winston returns from Latvia and he's catching up on all pop culture, so he's like watching Human Centipede on one laptop and King's Speech on another laptop.
That's right. I was trying to remember what the other one was. I remember King's Speech is like such a notable
And then he just turns to the camera. He's like, "Why is King's Speech rated R, but Human Centipede is also rated R? I don't get that."
I'm just imagining that syncs up with the mad scientist talking about how he's going to construct the human centipede, and then the little kid in King's Speech going to Colin Firth being like, "What's he talking about? I don't know, but he's saying it very well."
No, it's just like the Dark Side of the Rainbow. You can link up Human Centipede and King's Speech. It's like the shining forwards and backwards.
They did come out like the same year, right? Like maybe 1 year apart, right?
But it's like the lamest sync up ever. Like, this is adding nothing to either film.
Human Centipede is 2010. Wow,
Yeah.
good memory, Charlie.
Good
Yeah.
call.
Jesus Christ. Well, God, there's so much in my brain that could be used for good, and instead I have that factual knowledge. But anyway.
Same, except mine is I spent 3 hours watching Human Centipede and the Human Centipede 2. But yeah. Eyes of Tammy Faye 2000. This premiered at Sundance January 2000, opened limited on 2 theaters on July 21st 2000, and maxed out at 51 theaters. The budget, I have no idea. Opening weekend, it did $14,000 and a domestic and overall gross of $1 million. Top 5 films this weekend is just a murderer's row. What Lies Beneath, X-Men, Pokemon 2000, Scary Movie, and The Perfect Storm.
Interesting.
Oh, that's very strange.
God bless 2000.
I know.
What Lies Beneath, that movie would never be number 1 at the box office.
No.
Right now.
It's good,
It's
though.
great.
Oh, it's a lot of fun, especially Michelle Pfeiffer.
That would be a Hulu original.
Yeah.
That would be a Searchlight movie.
It was
yeah.
considered a surprise hit, even at the time, I think.
Do you think Pokemon 2000 was like not as successful as the first one because it like the amount of parents that were just refusing to take their kids after the first one?
It'll be on VHS in 9 months because it's 2000, okay? You can wait till then.
I asked my parents separately both times what was the worst movie you took us to as a kid, and they both, on separate occasions, were not around the other person, said Pokemon the first movie. And I went, why? And they were like, because we had no idea what was going on, and you did, and it frightened us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I even saw Pokemon 2000.
It's not, even as a kid, I didn't like it that much. And I saw
Well,
Pokemon
even the first movie, you
it's
watch
fine.
the first movie, it's not good either. It's not even like, oh, it's like an episode but expanded. It's like, none of this makes any sense, and I know what's supposed to be going on. Like,
Have we talked about the Team Rocket bit in the first movie where
Yes,
after they
yes.
missed the boat? Yeah, okay, never mind then. Okay.
Scary Movie still has plenty of stuff that makes me laugh.
We hit a boot! That's the one joke I like in that movie, I think. Yeah.
Oh no, there's a few, even the ones where I should not be laughing, but definitely where Dewey said something and then what's her name was just like, oh yeah, well Mom said stop putting your dick in the vacuum cleaner. And and then it comes back like 20 minutes later. They're making a commotion in their room, and then Dewey comes out of his room and he screams it out. And he walks to another room. He goes, "I told you not to disturb me while I'm cleaning my room."
The one thing that I always think of any scary movie is when they spoof Signs in the third one, and the aliens turn out to be peaceful, but they go, "You should see how we pee," and then they just urinate out of their index finger when they point, and Leslie Nielsen just goes, "Oh, we are alike in some ways," and does the exact same thing.
I remember I saw Scary Movie 3 like a week after it seemed like everybody did, and people, like, what was that, probably like 4th or 5th grade, and somebody told us that, and it was just like, it's like humor just got invented. It was just a thing on the playground, just being like, "Yo, he saw Scary Movie. Tell him about the peeing finger. Go ahead."
I had a friend who was not allowed to see Scary Movie 3 because the first two were rated R, but then was like, "But my mom said we could go see Kill Bill," and I was like, "I mean, I wish, but
Oh my God.
yeah, that's not happening right now."
Scary Movie 3, Kill Bill. Scary Movie 3, Kill Bill. Oh, God. Which to watch. Number one song in the U.S. is... Oh, wait, I forgot. The poster for The Perfect Storm, for some reason, has scared me since I was a kid, and it still scares me. I don't know why.
I have never seen that movie, but that is a very intense image.
Look at that boat.
Yeah, it's like the
Look at all
boat at
that
sea
water.
and like the storm.
That water's open.
The titular
Yeah.
storm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if
I'd
you-
like to see it. Yeah.
I mean, if you've been on a boat on a lake,
Wolfgang
it
is
gets
good.
intimidating when you go through, like... Huh?
No,
Wolfgang
Wolfgang
Peterson.
Peterson.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, the
I
late-
forgot that was
late
Wolfgang
Wolfgang,
Peterson.
Yeah.
I mean, even being on a boat in, like, a lake when there's a lot of chop and there's, like, a bunch of boats out there, it can be, like, really intimidating. So, like, just looking at that poster, it's like, yeah,
to no one's
that's
surprise,
a
one of my
nightmare.
dad's favorite films. Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah.
Oh, wow. Also, Charlie, you talking about chop makes me think of the bit in Wolf of Wall Street when they're talking about, like, going down to Monaco, and it's like, they're saying, "Oh, Chop will be fine, right?" And then, like, Jody Hall's wife says, like, "You don't know shit about Chop." He's like, "I'll chop your fucking credit card. How do you like that?"
That jump cut,
Yeah.
too, to, like, them in the middle of that apocalyptic storm.
What the fuck is going on? The jet skis just went overboard.
Come here.
I will not die
I will not
sober. Yeah.
I love you.
Incredible.
Perfect transition to the number one song in the U.S. this week is "Bent" by Matchbox 20. Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Matchbox 20, which probably has a song in The Perfect Storm. Number one song in Canada this week is "It's Gonna Be Me" by NSYNC. I think Canada wins. Plot description from Google for Eyes of Tammy Faye. 12 years after the scandalous collapse of the multi-million-dollar Christian empire built by Jim and Tammy Faye Baker. First of all, Baker is spelled with two K's.
Ks,
Just
yeah.
I don't like it.
I
Don't
thought the
like it.
same thing.
Yeah.
I was
Don't
like,
like
isn't
it.
that Backer?
Tammy Faye Baker.
It's like saying it with a Boston accent, you know?
Tammy Faye Backer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tammy and Jim are based in Maine.
Oh, God. The other thing I just thought of that's terrible is Jim and Tammy Barebacker.
We're gonna go see Eyes of Tammy Faye Backer. And then after that, we're going to a retrospective screening of The Brothers Macmillan. Yeah. Eyes of Tammy Faye tells the fascinating inside story of the rise, fall, and resurrection of the, quote, Queen of the Eyelashes. Okay. One of the most adored and reviled women of her time, the film follows her amazing tale from her love at first sight encounter with Jim to the glory days of PTL to the scandal that brought down both their empire and their family tumbling down.
Okay, I'm sorry. Can I say that was great? If we can do it again, but in Tammy Faye's voice. Okay, go.
No.
Do it in the puppet voice.
Oh, that's terrifying, dude.
The shit hits the fan.
And you need the harps, too. We'll have that in
That was
post.
good. That was good.
Yeah.
You need to be as careless as possible when doing.
Welcome to Dunkin' Donuts. Okay, I don't know why this has turned into a Boston movie. Directed by Fenton Bailey and Randy Barbato. Prior to this, they directed Party Monster, the Shockumentary in 1998. After this, they turned that doc into a narrative feature. I put down here nature feature, but that's funny. In 2003, Party Monster is what that's called. Thoughts on Party Monster? Charlie and Jack. Jack, you saw it today. I rewatched it yesterday. I still kind of like it, even though it is just like this movie. It's not like they very much upgraded directing skills or
No.
editing skills, because that movie should not be an hour and 40 minutes.
They, in
and
fact,
also-
use the same exact directing skills to no upgrade of quality. It is.
They do.
It's like, what's the opposite of lightning in a bottle? Because, like, that is usually a compliment, but when I think of this, it's almost like what doesn't go right within filmmaking, right? Like, what are your leads with charisma? I mean, you know, your leads have chemistry, but they don't have, like, presence to carry the movie as leads. And, you know, the movie tries to be funny, but it doesn't have, like, a bunch of jokes throughout to sustain it as a comedy. Like we mentioned before we started the pod, it has one party. That's all it can afford. It's interesting.
Where they stand there.
Yes.
They stand there and then they
They
film
walk through a corridor, and
The
there's like
party
3
in
people on
question-
either side.
The party in question does not have electricity. It just sort of, like, happens, and then you move on. Like, I didn't know what to
And then
make
they
of any of it.
they have to go meet. Well, no, they don't have to go meet Dermot Mulroney. They have to meet his wife, and then she's like, "We're kicking you out, and you have to go to rehab, and you can't walk around here naked." Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
And then
also, they
the
have
John
Mia Kirshner
Stamos
for one
talk
scene.
show. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's who it was. Mia Kirshner. She's in like 3, but I mean, she does nothing.
Mia Kirshner just shows up to be like, "You suck," and now I'm leaving the movie. And like,
Party Monster, check it out. I guess.
you
Inside.
don't have to.
Okay.
It's on Tubi. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it is. I will say.
Biden's like,
the-
okay, guys, hang on.
I will say I was drawn to it because a bunch of people when I was a teenager were like, "Yeah, we do drugs and watch that movie all the time," and I was like, I watched it stone cold sober and was drawn to the queer elements despite not fully even acknowledging that I was queer yet. But yeah,
There's
that movie
not
looks.
many queer elements.
Yeah, I was just gonna
There's,
say.
there's not, and the movie looks like ass, and it's just.
And as you mentioned before
I-
we started this pod, you were like, Seth Green just Googles, you know, gay voice and then just sort of like runs with that. Like, it's not,
Yeah.
you know,
Kevin said that,
a
yeah.
layered. Oh, sorry, yeah, but it's just like.
Oh yeah, no
yeah,
worries.
no,
Yeah.
it's not a very complex look. Into
It's a fascinating story that feels
Oh,
very
yeah.
surface level, which is, you know, like
Yeah.
what I mean, the ensemble cast of that is insane, though. I mean, I keep forgetting that certain people are in that movie, and it's
Natasha
like,
Lyonne is in one scene, and she has like so much stuff in her hair and on her. They did so much for her. There's what's my man from My So-Called Life plays Angel.
Wilson Cruz.
Wilson
yeah.
Cruz,
Yeah.
yeah.
There's him. Yeah, there's just a ton of people. Check it out. Anyways, Inside Deep Throat in 2005, and Carrie Fisher, Wishful Drinking in 2010. Trivia, I have 2. RuPaul, who narrates the doc, has said that Tammy Faye changed his life by showing him the importance of focusing on the good in humanity. Sure. Tammy Faye would go on to be an influence and a source of inspiration throughout RuPaul's hit show, RuPaul's Drag Race, which Bailey and Barbados' company World of Wonder produced that show. As a figure in the gay culture, she influenced and challenged the themes and is referred throughout the show, including impersonations. Barbados said in an interview with IndieWire that they worked on the doc for about 2 years and that it took a long time to persuade Tammy to be involved in the doc. And I'm sure to persuade her, we were like, we're not going to tell them anything bad you said. We're going to make you look amazing.
By persuading, it actually means we're going to cleanse you of any wrongdoing. So I'm sure.
Yeah, I took a documentary film class in college, and the first thing that we learned was documentaries present themselves as truth. That is not true. Like every film, documentaries are biased, and they come from a very biased point of view. And in this case, it is very, very biased to make her as sympathetic as possible, without even getting into the nitty-gritty of anything that she was involved in, apart from how sad her downfall was.
Yeah.
But we don't understand what the details of that downfall were, other than surface level points.
And if
I think
there's
yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Please.
Yeah. No, it's like if there's any purpose to being a great documentarian, it's like riding the line between bias and objectivity. And I guess they do not. But I mean, that's what separates great dogs from ordinary ones to me. Is like you are trying to present a complete picture without pressing the scale too much. But I don't know. Just
Yeah, even as someone who wasn't super familiar with the whole Baker enterprise, I was like watching it and thinking like, what are you like expecting me to take away from this? Like when they interviewed the one guy, it's just like, why would he take $150 million and keep 3 for himself? I'm like, that's still stealing. I don't know what you're trying to tell me here. It's like,
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, no, it is funny because a lot of the talking heads are like, well, if you look at the facts and evidence presented in the case, it's like they broke the law. Like, this is not anything to be argued.
Also, please present us with the facts and evidence because I do not know.
Yeah,
I
right.
mean, one point in this movie, because it's hard to get into like what the plot of this thing is, but at one point it was like, if there's anyone that she reminds me of, it's Hillary Clinton, because they're also involved with men who treated them badly, and that's and it's like, okay, that's an interesting potential thesis. I don't buy it, but are you going to go any further? No.
Nope. We got
like,
the
those are
standee of Hillary Clinton. Isn't that enough?
I'm sorry. I know this movie was made in 2000, but those are two very different people, and you're just going to do an offhand comment like that and then just be like, okay, yeah, that point, sure, but why else would you bring that up unless you want to open another can of worms? But like most of the events presented in this documentary was like, well, this happened, but enough of that. This thing also happened. Like,
yeah, it'll be like it'll. Sorry, go ahead, Jack.
Oh
please.
no! If it's anything, I do. You know, you don't want to judge anything that you wish the movie was, but it's like, you hoped that someone made this doc years away from the actual events and not it in 2000, where it feels like the events were so fresh. You say this, and then there was a narrative film of this, but I don't know.
Well, there also is a second documentary, which I'm sure the movie probably pulls from, which actually like has a real... Because this just makes it seem like her downfall was like, yo, I talked to the guy that made Cops, and he doesn't want to make my show, so I guess my life is ruined.
Yeah, and, you know, it's interesting that you bring up, like, you know, how close you are to, like, time-wise, to, like, the events happening, like, I guess, to, like, you know, have, like, kind of a, you know, really cut deep and everything, but, like, I mean, we're talking about Shattered Glass, like, in next week and everything, and that movie was, like, you know, that film, like, takes place in 1998 and everything, that's when the events happen and everything, and then the movie comes out in 2003, you know, whereas, like, you know, this whole Tammy Faye, or the whole Baker enterprise thing, that's like in what, like the late 80s or whatever, like that's kind of like where the bulk of the stuff is happening, so there's like a decade plus time, and then you have like, and then this is probably worth mentioning, you know, Jack, you're one of the people, I think you're the only person in this call who has seen the Eyes of Tammy Faye, the Michael Showalter directed fictionalized or reenacted retelling of like the whole
that's how he's introduced to parties. He'd be like, here's Jack Draper, he's seen the Eyes of Tammy Faye 2021.
Thanks guys, thanks.
I don't think
a few minutes on Tammy
anybody
Faye.
I had a big Oscar party last year, and when Jessica Chastain won, we were like, has anybody seen this movie?
And then that's when I walked into your party, and I was like, I have, everybody. Hi, you don't know me.
And then you
Burst
laughed.
to the wall like Kool-Aid Man.
I saw it like how many days? 6 days ago, and I can.
I've seen it. Is it any good?
And then
Not
you were
really.
Like, yeah.
It's
Hi,
not
Jack.
terrible.
And then you were like, well, I gotta be on my way now, and we're like, okay, goodbye.
Okay, bye bye.
Jack died on the way to his.
Oh no.
Jack, you look like you have something to say. Do you? Yes, I certainly do.
I'm now a Southern gentleman.
It is interesting too, because like the most interesting documentaries are ones that are like, to me sometimes, this is a much different type of documentary, but have any of you seen My Kid Could Paint That, which is the one about the kid who was like 4 years old making finger paintings, and they were selling to like people like Oprah for like millions of dollars, and it was just like, well, this kid is just finger painting. And then like, so they started making a documentary about her, and then they realized like in the midst of making that documentary that her dad was a wannabe artist and is possibly like, you know, influencing the kids or making these finger paintings themselves. And then the documentarian has to be like, I bonded with this family and their child, and now I don't want to have to call them liars. And yep, that one. Yep. It's a really fascinating documentary, because like then they have to shift loyalties and empathies to be like, I don't what do I do with my movie now? I don't know what to do.
82
I
minutes.
can't call the.
Okay.
Yeah, it's great. And to be fair, it's apples and oranges in terms of comparing documentaries, but I think that it's interesting when documentaries get reflexive like that and draw the filmmaker back into something like that. This is not even aiming to do something like that, but it is very much a one-track mind of, she had it real hard. And look, maybe she did. But, like, it doesn't give me any sort of interiority into exactly what, like, why she's Christian, why puppets, why anything. Like, it's just like,
she went to
that's
the
just who she
grave about
is.
why puppets. You're not getting that answer.
Yeah.
It's we'll talk about like documentaries we like, but it's the thing with documentaries. I very, very, very rarely watch a documentary. I was like, that was bad. At the worst, it'll be fine because they are so formulaic, and that's why I like it. I want to learn and be somewhat entertained. I don't care. Like, it is very hard if like it's a known enough documentary, like if it has money behind it, it's all going to look and feel and play the same exact way, so it's very rarely just outright bad. So yeah, it's really, really weird when a documentary is just straight up bad, and especially one that was put out by a studio and not like one you saw on like fucking YouTubers make better documentaries than
That's the interesting thing is like Lionsgate puts this out, although like I feel like was it like Lionsgate Home Entertainment that like we saw like in the opening like logo or on like whatever version we watched it on?
Well, because it was ripped from the DVD, I think.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
But it also says like at the end of the credits like for Cinemax producer John Hoffman or whatever. It's
Yes.
like, this is also shown on Cinemax or something. Like it feels like something you'd see on TV.
Yeah.
They said
It
in
feels
that
like made for
IndieWire.
TV. Yeah.
Oh, it's an true Hollywood story. Yeah. They said in that IndieWire interview that something they were working on, like, also this is a really weird IndieWire interview where it's straight from 2000 and they just talk really weird, and they were just like, oh, and we're also working on this documentary, and they were just like, oh, that sounds like it's an HBO one. They were like, no, it's going to Cinemax, and then they asked for Eyes of Tammy Faye, and they were like, well, that one's going to HBO, and they were like, no, it's made for Cinemax. and then the interviewer goes, that's really weird. It doesn't seem like something to be on HBO. What are your inspirations? And I was like, what? But yeah, I think it was like made for Cinemax, but like Lionsgate had the theatrical, but barely, seems like. Yeah.
51 theaters. What an opening.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of anything, because there's not much trivia if we should just get into initial thoughts. Let's see. Yeah, let's just talk about quick like favorite documentaries or ones that you've seen recently. Favorite documentaries as of recently, the Adrian Shelley documentary like ruined me. That is an incredible documentary. There's one called I forget what it's called. It's like Who Found Johnny or something like that, but it's about the kid who's the very first kid that was on like a missing milk carton. Who Took Johnny is what it's called. It was like the first kid that was ever put on a milk carton for a missing kid. And that thing is scary as shit. What else? Yeah, I think that was just a random Tubi watch. I don't even think it was an HBO. But that was really nuts. In the Heart of Gold recently, that was pretty not awesome, but that was great. Yeah. Any other favorite documentaries as of recently?
I got a resolution this year to watch a bunch of documentaries this year. So I watched Cusp, which is about a group of teenage girls living in like a military town in like Texas, and kind of like the traumas that they deal with, and like it really like captures like kind of like the hazy sort of often drug fueled vibe of like them like trying to like just sort of like while away the days while also like dealing with some like the fucked up shit that's happened in their lives. It's really like an empathetic movie, but and it is also kind of hard to watch because like you can sort of see them, like there's one girl who's like she's like 15 and her boyfriend like is like much older, and it's like you almost like kind of get the sense that like you're watching something really bad happen like right before your eyes. But that's really good. I also liked Adrian, and that's interesting. We were talking about documentaries where the filmmaker inserts themselves into the whole thing, and that is very much a case of that because it's Adrian Shelley's husband who is in there directing it. I really liked 7+7. That's like the Up series that Michael Apted helped direct. I watched the short film that they made for that, and that's really sweet. Yeah, no, it's really interesting. Like kind of like how like you get like a commentary on like sort of like on class and race differences in England in that time period.
I want to see the
sort
up
of, like,
series. That's so
yeah,
good.
I've only seen the first two
Same.
movies, but like I really am curious to see where they take that, where that whole series went as the years went on. Yeah, those are just a few that we liked, that I liked that I've seen so far. Charlie, what about you? Recent docs that you've seen that you really like, even recently?
I mean, we did talk about Mr. Death, which did that
Hell
get
yeah.
mentioned? Did that get
No,
mentioned?
it was in the back of my mind though. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I mean, like, that is a movie where Errol Morris just lets the subject talk and kind of bury their own grave. Much different,
Like
than
in
this
typical
movie,
Errol Morris fashion, like it just sort of
Yeah,
like that's that.
yeah, exactly. Like, and it's the exact opposite of this movie, where it's kind of like, okay, I'm like, I this guy gives me the creeps, and I don't like anything he's saying, but I'm fascinated because it's like somebody has to do that job. Whereas here, it's like she's a huge televangelical Christian, and it's just kind of like, okay, but why? But in terms of the documentaries that we liked, recently, I mean, in terms of recently, All the Beauty and the Bloodshed, is incredible.
Yeah.
And also one of the best examples of recent documentaries to be used as a political like call to action. I think that movie makes you infuriated in all the right ways, while also painting intimate portraits of its subjects, and
while also being very so well made. Like it doesn't
Yes.
have to be like a message movie just for the surface levelness of it. It just is so well told, as well as being something that is an ongoing issue. Yeah, it's like the complete package. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's a film that doesn't even tell its story in chronological order, because you get Nan Goldin's backstory interspliced with the ongoing, you know, legal process of, you know, that they're in the midst of. I mean, Capturing the Freedmans is another one where the more evidence you see, the less you know. I mean, I think we can walk away with that one knowing probably what happened, but at the same time, it's like, that's the type of thing that examines a really traumatic, horrible thing going on in a family, and how that can, like, tear a family apart. I haven't seen it in a few years, but that's one that comes to mind. I'm trying to think of the documentaries that I've watched most recently as like Vinarovich, which, it's funny, he's also in All the Beauty and the Bloodshed, but that's another one that I've been drawn to, films that are documentaries that are angry, because I feel like we're especially in a time where the world does feel like it's on fire for most of us, and I like films that are driven by kind of an internal rage that makes us want to see change. And sometimes, you know, film is a political, you know, art form that can be very much used, especially in nonfiction, to, you know, provide some form of immediacy that something needs to happen, something needs to stop this. And while the Eyes of Tammy Faye, that's not even the subject of, it's not even trying to provide, in some ways it's trying to provide a, like, we need to stop treating women this way, especially like Christian women. It's so singular and so narrowly focused in a way that doesn't really provide any big perspectives on anything, just this one individual person. And that's fine. I like movies about individual people too, documentaries about individual people. The Imposter is one that I can think of that's very much about a singular person and how their actions impact people, but that's also a very different one. It's complicated why I had so many issues with this movie, and also I feel like every example I brought up is kind of almost not fair, because documentary, like every genre, can be a variety of things. But what this film does, as we've mentioned, is it does feel like a made-for-TV special in a way that is just limiting. And that's not why I go to see documentaries. I want to be educated. I want insight into something I don't know very much about. And this is not that. I know that kind of gets into my opening thoughts, but that whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, the thing that makes this movie not good is it lacks perspective, lacks information, lacks good filmmaking, kind of just like all the things you want in a documentary. Like it's just I feel like it like and like Kevin, you were talking about like documentaries, like it's kind of hard to fuck up as a genre. I don't necessarily agree because I've seen movies where it's like I feel like this is like a really fascinating milieu or subject matter, and then you see the movie and it's like this is still bad. Like I don't know how you fuck this up. Like Standing in the Shadows of Motown, I'm like I love Motown music. This will be great. And then we watched it and I was like, this is the most pedestrian approach to this material that you could possibly have taken. How did you do this?
I think sometimes bad documentaries can be the most frustrating kinds of movies because it's supposed to be kind of an exercise in journalism through, cinematic aesthetics. And if it's not done well aesthetically and the research isn't there and everything, it's just kind of like, well, I could have read a fucking article and gotten the same amount of information in a quarter of the time. Exactly. Maybe less. Like, yeah.
Stand by. 5 seconds to PTL.
Hi, everybody!
Tammy Faye is the First Lady of Religious Broadcasting.
Steve is a patient of AIDS, and he so generously allowed us to talk to him today.
Tammy Baker did it
3 times the laugh and 10 times the makeup
when no one else would do it.
I refuse to label people.
But it all started out with puppets.
A star is born. Hello, I'm Ellie the Alligator.
And I'm Susie Muppet. We kept adding station after station, and it was an awesome thing that happened.
But things began to sour.
Things fall apart.
Jim and Tammy started almost everything that is now powerful in religious telecasting. But as soon as they got it built, they were kind of let go.
I can't understand. What did we do?
Burying the past.
Instead of languishing in the desert, Tammy decided to get back in front of the cameras.
So you've never done pictures without those eyelashes?
No, and I never will, because that's my trademark.
Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's special guest, Tammy Faye.
I think the eyes are so important. I believe the eyes of the soul. I truly do.
Let's do initial thoughts then. I want Bryden to go first.
Yeah. I found this basically insufferable from minute 1 to minute 78. I just could not stand this movie. It was I found just aesthetically the whole thing just grated. It's early digital video and everything, so it's super garish looking, and I think the fact that everyone's the aesthetic of the movie itself is so cranked up in a way that I just find really tacky looking, and not in a particularly incisive way. Having the puppet,
it's without purpose. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Other than Charlie asking why puppets. It's well, because they were on the show, and that's really it. And they think it's a cute joke, but they do it so many times where it's the same squeaky voices and the harp music that keeps playing. I'm just it's exhausting, especially because there's an early stretch in the movie where it's going through all the churches that Tammy Faye and her husband Jim Baker tried to go to, and it's they keep getting excommunicated basically, and it's just there's 3 different harp scored puppet intros in the span of 2 minutes, and it's just is this a joke that you're doing this to show how badly they were getting on their feet at the start, but anyways, yeah. And it's the kind of stuff that I feel it's overblown. They're not even doing it as a joke and everything, but it'll be boom sort of sound effects. It's while they were on TV, their marriage was falling apart. Sort of, and it's the kind of stuff that I feel you see get made fun of either in comedies or on Twitter accounts and anything. I thought of it's not, I don't think they quite do this method in the movie, but it made me think there was some Twitter post where it was James Gandolfini posing with SpongeBob, and the Twitter caption was saying, first they were friends, then the next image is the same image but in black and white, now they weren't, or whatever.
Or it's also the true crime documentary episode of It's Always Sunny,
right,
yeah,
it's super, super laying it on thick, and ways that it's talking about the Judas kiss betrayal, and it'd be a snake rattle noise, and it's it's just all the corny choices you could possibly make, and doing it without much of a sense of irony or any real purpose. And so on a filmmaking level, I just found this awful to look at and listen to. But on a subject matter wise too, I feel like, yeah, it doesn't really like delve all that deeply into who Tammy Faye is a person, or doesn't really question any of the stuff that how she's presented in the movie. I mean, like, you know, whether it's like stuff at the start of the movie when they're showing like a childhood photo of her and like zooming in on her like really close and everything, it's like, what was going on in that childhood? And it's like, well, the movie's not going to give us an answer. Is it? Or
it doesn't even do that for the children either. At one point, the daughter's like, "I ran away from home," and I'm assuming it's based on the tabloid scandals, but it's also like, well, there's got to be more than just the scandals. And, like that.
Well, it's. I also thought it was funny that like when they're talking about like how it affected her kids, it shows like the daughter, she has like piercings or whatever, and then it shows like, and her son was troubled, and it just shows her son sitting in a chair or whatever.
Yeah,
it looks fine to me. But
after the scandals, they both shopped at Hot Topic for 7 years. Like, it's just that type of attitude. Like,
yeah, I mean, look, maybe stuff was going on, but the movie doesn't tell us really. It's not specific about it. But then also it doesn't question stuff like, you know, it talks about how like Tammy Faye Baker was respected for how like she reached out to the gay community, like especially like during the AIDS crisis, how she would interview people on the show, and that is a pretty notable thing, especially in that time period. But the movie, I feel like there's some murkiness with like the way that she treats how she talks about gay people in the movie and everything. Like she talks about like putting an arm around an AIDS patient on the show, and it's like, well, the way you're showing it in the movie, he's on a TV monitor being interviewed from somewhere else, so you're not putting your arm around him. It's not quite going with that what you're talking about. And then when she talks about how she's friends with one of her former co-hosts who, you know, was living with HIV at the time that the movie was coming out, you know, she says like, you know, I don't really see him as gay though. I just view him as a human being. And it's like, well, then you don't really see him. Like you're denying like a huge part of his identity in doing that. Yeah.
Can I interject for just a second? And I know, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting your initial thoughts, Bryden, but
please.
They can do that and have it be a good film if the film wasn't so much on her side. Like
that's what I'm getting at. Yeah, it doesn't question her on that. Yeah,
it doesn't. It's just like, oh, isn't she good for doing that? And it's like, no, I mean, not really. Like that's. I mean, and I know it was 2000 and we weren't talking about certain things the same way, but yeah, the film is so very much like, isn't that the right way to do that? And it's like, no. that is very tone deaf.
And it's like only because she's being performative doesn't excuse her at all. And Chanley, I think the movie comes down to like only Tammy Faye being next to Jim Baker. She looks much better, but she's just as complicit. And,
I mean, that's the thing that, I mean, I will try to make this brief. I mean, I'm sure I don't know. You know what? Maybe
you'll have to make it brief because we don't really have a plot to go through.
I'll come back to it a little bit later, but there's one particular part of the case.
By the way, we're gonna wrap up after Bryden's initial thoughts. That's like he's like talking for all of us. I thought.
There is a bit in this movie that like is like I only like knew about it because like I was looking up one of the subjects afterwards, but like the whole they talk about his infidelity with Jim Baker in the movie. It's like his infidelity, his one night stand with Jessica Hahn, like a church clerk or whatever, and it's like you actually look into what that case was. The movie does not do the movie's like borderline misrepresenting what the whole fucked up nature of that thing was, where it was like she accused him of rape at the time, and like it sounds like there was like coercion and there was like an age difference, but like the movie makes it like, oh, he cheated on his wife and everything. It's like, well, no, it wasn't just that. It was like there might have been something else going on, and like it's the reporting on it sounds kind of murky, but not murky, but like sorry, I'll make this really quick. I will say, reading I believe what happened to Jessica Hahn, like what she said. It sounds like he had sex with her in like very bad circumstances, where it sounds like it could have been assault. Was assault. The way that it's written about, but like I will say though, the way the movie talks about it, and also the way that some of the articles I was reading, it was like it would help them to be more direct in talking in their phrasing and everything, because like I feel like that like then leads to, I don't know, the way the movie is vague about the whole issue. It curdles because it's just like well now, and especially when they contrast it where it's like showing Jessica Hahn like riding around for like a Playboy shoot or whatever, it's and like having like these sharp strings or whatever. It's like you're making it look like she's like some sort of like temptress figure and everything, when like that's when it seemed like she was like there was something really horrible that had happened to her and everything, but the movie doesn't really portray her in a sympathetic light, and I
Well,
think in that
uses-
context is really gross.
It uses footage of this like made-for-TV movie where it's like he's getting a massage from her, and then like a glass of wine spills over the Bible as if she was like this huge seductress or something, and there's only footage of her, no footage of him, and it makes it out to be like that people need to know there is so much more from me. But I'm like, you feel like you're justifying the media narrative and not what actually happened. Like, you're not diving into his perspective or his, what you just brought up, his controversies at all. And as a documentary, that perspective needs to be, you have to take responsibility for that perspective on that angle, that you are entirely villainizing her. Like, just because the media portrays it that way doesn't mean you have to portray it the same way just because that's what people are talking about. If you want to talk about this in a nuanced way, you can't have her just be the villain in the movie.
It feels like it's taking Jim Baker's side, especially when you read that like he was like writing books about like saying like she like came on to me, man, and everything. She was trying to extort me and everything, and you're just like, dude, like what are you? Anyways,
and the fact that they have footage of her defending him, and it's so intrinsically tied to her empathetic point of view, it makes it out to be that she was just this like
temptress.
It's really temptress. It's a really problematic like the adulterous woman type of narrative, which
trying to break up the Bakers.
Like you're not doing anything by depicting it in this way with this footage, with this material at all. And you're right, like there's shots of her looking like a fucking Elizabeth Berkley in The Weight of Water in this movie. Like
it does seem like a lot of that portion of Jim Baker's story is taken from the media side of it and not coming to their own conclusions, while they're trying to paint this one-sided portrait of the Baker family. And I think it's like they're restricted by, I mean, you know, I agree with everything Brian's saying, but also it's like they're restricted by budget, runtime, material. Like it feels like they want to give you a broad scope of their entire story, yet they can't fit it all into like one 79-minute doc. But that's also like exactly, where it's like where it's like but you guys, it's almost like they're trying to do it all, but it's like you're not coming at this in any clever format. It's like, it's just
I mean, the case, I'll make this my last point before we give other thoughts. It's like a lot of the other movie is just sort of like, well, you're not really commenting on anything, so I feel like you're not really saying anything. Whereas like, I feel like them not commenting on this or presenting it in that way, that is them actively presenting a damaging point of view in a way that like I find really offensive. I mean, I don't have a problem saying that. Like, it is offensive to me.
Mm-hmm.
So bad movie. Other thoughts, please. Everyone take the floor.
To be fair, did not realize this was going to be as poorly made as it was. Although it was a lot of soft recommendations when the Michael Showalter film came out, and I think I had known about the doc before the Showalter film came out, or you know, I think it was just like I was reminded of it when that was out, because like Tammy Faye I didn't know too much about until I saw that film. I didn't know her story, but I knew who she was. It's weird. Show of hands, actually. Who here went to Catholic middle school? Anyone? Show of hands. Yes? Yeah?
Elementary school.
Elementary.
Same.
Yeah. I heard a lot, right? Like, or a few times, like, Tammy Faye Baker is, like, thrown around as an adjective for other faculty and staff around my school. And I would hear, I mean, you know, context when you're in middle school, it's like you don't know what that quite means, or the gravity of calling someone like, oh yeah, she's being such a Tammy Faye today. Oh, do you see like the amount of makeup that she's wearing, or like the outfit that she has on? And that's what I would hear a lot, that the staff would call each other. I was like, I remember like, Mom, do you know? I remember like, who's Tammy Faye Baker? And you know, like my mom explained to me. I didn't really recall much of what the explanation was, but I'm sure like, I got like the whole story. And then like, I think my grandmother has like records of the Baker's tracks. And I don't know, I think that there's something to like how she captured the sympathy of a lot of Americans at the time, but also being this very much caricature-y goofball that brought a lot of good, but was deeply conflicted about her stance on like addiction and, you know, of course, like trying to embrace the Catholic community, but also trying to like go out of their teachings, I guess. It's all very interesting to me, I guess, because it's like, I think there's something deeply tragic about Tammy Faye, while also neither of the doc or the fiction film that I've seen really taps into the deep sadness that she has on the surface. Yeah, this movie is not very good, but I think I find it interesting because I've heard her name thrown around so much when I was a kid. Also, the best doc that I've seen recently is Fred Wiseman's Welfare. It's one of the best movies I've ever seen.
Nice. I need to see more Wiseman. The only one I've seen is High School. I really, really like that one a lot.
Slowly but surely, I'm going through all of them, but it's going to take me a million years.
My friend Erica Hill works for Frederick Wiseman, and I'm just like, God damn, that is such a great dream. Like,
what a king. Yeah. King.
Charlie, initial thoughts?
Yeah, I'm mirroring everything. I mean, yeah, it was 79 minutes. I was raised by agnostic parents, so I didn't really know who Tammy Faye was.
Yeah. I'm agnostic now, but I just didn't really.
Yeah. No. I was just.
I don't hold Tammy Faye in high regard. It's more just.
we just kicked Jack out of the call. No. But like, yeah, I was just thinking. It's funny. I was just when I was drawing a blank to what documentaries do you love, which is such a huge question. I was like, and then I just looked at my wall and just thinking about like The Times of Harvey Milk is another film that was all about like a figure at that time that did present warts and all about everybody, and it in some places it plays like a true crime doc, and then and in other ways it's very much, you know, a call to action about like how fucked up it is that, you know, this was, you know, just queerness was not tolerated and stuff like that. And I know we're only getting to a certain aspect of it, but I feel like Tammy Faye is someone who's kind of like acknowledged by either the Christian community or the queer community in certain ways. And like, I was just thinking, looking over at that, like this was all taking place during the same time in California, around the time that Times of Harvey Milk was taking place. Like, why no mention of that? Like, why like, and I'm not saying a documentary has to be about everything. No movie has to be about everything. You're not going to get bonus points, you know, like deducted because of stuff like that. But it is something like that where I just think about something like that is so empathetic to Harvey Milk and what his stance is and stuff like that. And again, not fair to compare apples and oranges, but that film goes into every facet of so many people's lives. And here it is so fast-paced and so surface level that I couldn't believe it's the longest time I've watched a movie, whether it be a nonfiction film or a fiction film, where the fast-paced, the pace of it just made it so much more uninteresting, because it's clear that the filmmakers have no interest in diving further other than like a Wikipedia article. It's just, okay, why puppets? Well, they kids love puppets.
But it's not only that, but it's also the Wikipedia article that's unfinished.
Yeah, like what is it about her faith? I don't know much about her faith other than she was raised in it. You know, like I have a dear friend who was raised in an evangelical background, who married someone who was not Christian or like full on, you know, is not spiritual at all, and also came out as bisexual, and you know, has been losing like touch with people that she grew up with, people that, you know, she's very close within her family because of that, like stuff like that. Like, if I can go meet someone and make friends with someone and get a more intimate view of that than this person that I've never met, like everything about this, I don't know anything about her other than she was really sad. And I think Tammy Faye is a fascinating person. I really wanted to know more, and I genuinely wonder, because so much of this film constantly reminds us of how involved she is in this movie, which I think is a problem, because that means she has control over what can and cannot be said, and what she's not interested in. I mean, there's even a moment where she's like, can we not, they're taking makeup off of her, I believe. And she literally says, can we not have this? I don't want this part of the documentary. I just want more of the, like, and that spoke volumes to me when that scene happened, because I'm like, oh, that's why the first hour of this is not as interesting, is because I feel like she has so much control over what will and will not be shown, which I think is a detrimental flaw to making a story about a character that has been through so much complicated legal issues, personal traumas. Like, I really do think she's fascinating as a cultural icon and as a person, but it is so limited in its viewpoint about what the film wants to say about her. And I think that is a detrimental flaw to documentary filmmaking. Sometimes documentaries need to be nitty-gritty and show things that are not ideal. And there are with the exception of a couple scenes, there's one where she talks about her drug addiction, and then they're like, hey, Tammy, do you want to sing a song? And she's just like, I'm just going to go over by this boat here. Like, that was the most interesting part of that movie to me, because she was allowing herself to be vulnerable and be like, I was so high on whatever drug there was, or so addicted to whatever drug that was,
it's like
where she didn't want to sing a song.
I forget the name of it. It's like a...
But even...
Yeah.
It's Ativan, right? It's Ativan.
It's Ativan. It is Ativan. Yes, thank you, Brian.
Yeah.
But that, I was just like, go deeper. I want to know. And instead, we get scenes, the most extensive scenes of her. There's like, I don't want to say a 4 or 5 minute scene where she has to like, she's like, I'm afraid of flying, and then they're in the middle of a storm and the plane has to ground because of the storm, and she's
like
just playing
9
around
fade outs.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, you keep thinking it's ending and it keeps going,
and she's just playing with her wig, and I'm like, this is nothing. Like, I get that she's afraid of flying, and I get that she loves her wigs. We already know this. Why is this in the movie? Like, that doesn't, like, even her fear of flying. Why is she afraid of flying? Like, what, like there's no, they just accept you to like nod your head and be like, that makes logical sense, and then move on, where it's like, no, people are not that simple.
I guess, like, I'm gonna break a record for the softest defense ever, but I guess maybe she doesn't know. Like, why is she afraid of flying? She just can't tell you. She just is. Like, why does she wear so much makeup? She just doesn't, she just wants to, right? It's like, I guess she, like, I'm pretty sure, oh man, now I feel like the documentarians, because I'm trying to remember the Showalter film by memory, because this movie feels like it's being put together by memory, and I think that they married young, like,
they met at Bible college.
Jim and Tammy met in college, yeah, that's right, and, of course everyone's different, like, you find your partner at your own age, of course, God bless, and it's like, she never got to form an identity. She never got to, like, find herself, become Tammy first, then Jim's wife second. It was always the reverse. And I guess, like, maybe they tried, right? Like, maybe Benton, the documentarians,
Bailey and Barbara.
Bailey and Barbara. Yeah. Where did I get Benton from? It's one of those things that, maybe they tried to really interrogate her motives and what she's looking for in life and in her decisions in her career, but she just wants these things because maybe she's told to want them, or because I think back to what Charlie said about the makeup scene, or maybe multiple scenes, and
it's like an extended
scene,
it's an extended when she's doing the photo shoot,
because it's like she then reveals that she's as into the business and selling herself as much as Jim is, because he's really like the one who like went out and like bought like the property and bought like all like the cable stuff and like made this into a whole enterprise. And then Tammy is like wanting to do commercials and like be on television and like preach the gospel, but it's like she doesn't take off the makeup, because it's like that's her. She's selling this like this persona that she's, I mean, maybe it isn't a persona, but it's like it almost feels this way, and this is the work that we have to do to read into this, because like the movie just doesn't interrogate these shades of gray. It's interesting.
And but like, and going back, I also just want to mention my friend I'm not going to name them because I don't know how public they want to make this, but like they are still very religious. They're still like, I love Jesus and, you know, all this, but also struggle with their community, you know, of why, you know, like saying some points that Tammy also says of like at one point, like, how are we supposed to be the community of, you know, acceptance when, you know, we can't even talk to these people and judge them. And just, you know, like this friend of mine, like meeting them and talking to them about this sort of stuff. And I've never been a spiritual person, but like it you know, they have so much insight and empathy into what makes someone spiritual and what makes them drawn to this type of lifestyle in a way that is so healthy and so wonderful, that gives them this faith. And like the movie doesn't even do that. Like it doesn't provide any sense of why she's so drawn to faith, why she wants to be a star, why she feels the need to sell herself. It's all just assuming like, well, you can, like, you'd want to do this, right? And it's like, well, not everybody does. Like, not everybody has to be this icon. She is an icon. She clearly wanted to be an icon. Why? What was it in her upbringing? What was it in her, you know, what was her family like? Why was she so attracted to this person? They literally say, like, on April Fool's Day, she married this person. And it's literally just like, you don't even get an insight into their relationship. I mean, to go back to a movie we talked about, like, Mr. Death, like, at least gets into that weird fucking relationship that, you know, its subject gets into with this woman who works at, you know, a fucking diner, and even gives her perspective, a supporting player that is, or supporting person, excuse me, that, like, it even gives them time. And instead it just reads like tabloids. It reads like something you'd read in Us Weekly. And it makes me feel even more cheated, because it's like, I kind of, like, okay, apart from basic plot points, I kind of knew all of this just through assumption, you know? Like, it doesn't educate me or provide any sort of commentary in any way other than, you know, and especially the way it's framed of, you know, Tammy reached out to this person, but they didn't want to be a subject. They, like, and it's like, well, yeah, because they probably know that the filmmakers are so intrinsically linked to what makes her happy. And I'm not saying that always has to be a bad thing, but it does show your bias in a way that is not interesting to me when you're not willing to dive deeper into the psychology of this person. And I can imagine, I want to know why, you know, she is this empathetic towards the queer community. I genuinely want to know. It doesn't provide anything other than she's a nice person. And it's like, I don't not believe that she's not nice. The movie made that point, but like, that's not enough to warrant a fucking film.
Yeah. Or at least, like, it's not enough to like, I don't know, like, if she was gonna be showing empathy towards the gay community, like, why isn't it then taking a point to show Jim Baker not siding with Timmy? You know, it's those things where it's like, she doesn't seem like she's surrounded by a circle at all. Like, it seems like she's very alone. And we just never get into the loneliness of herself, but more so like propping up Jim as this perfect American couple. And yet it's like, then I don't know. It's weird. Like, I don't.
They also interview both Jim Baker and her second husband, who also went to prison for fraud stuff, which is pretty funny. And I will say, it is kind of funny that they eventually, the last wide shot when they revealed they're interviewing him in prison the whole time, that is kind of funny.
That is really good, yeah. And but, it's like those interviews come after that moment when she's like, well, here we go. I don't know what lies ahead of us, but we're going to be happy, right? Or it's like, and then they drive off or something, yeah.
Close the door, and that's the end of the movie.
We're going to get out in 50 minutes.
But her everything about her life, her faith, her drug addiction. Why was she so addicted to drugs? That does not.
They do give like she went to see a doctor or whatever. I can't remember what it was. Yeah, that she went to see a doctor for, but.
Or she just like couldn't sleep, or she
insomnia.
Was, like,
that might have been it. Yeah.
But also, it's like the drug addiction comes at a weird time, because she's like, yeah, I didn't think I would become addicted because I don't have an addictive personality. And it's like, but you should know the drugs are bad. Like, if you preach this much about the evangelical way of like a clean life, like, I don't know. It's just...
I guess how much do they know? I don't know when Ativan became known as an addictive thing, or like what the word on that was at the time. You know, that's how some of these prescription drugs work. Sometimes they're marketed as a good thing, and then 20 years later, it's like, well, that actually we found out it's really bad. Kevin, I want to hear your thoughts too, because I feel like I'm sorry, we kind of got away from the initial thoughts thing.
Yeah. Sorry, Kevin.
Oh no, I wasn't saying anything because I have nothing to say. Really.
This is one of those, right?
Yeah. I feel like if I would have gotten this footage of Tammy Faye that they got, I would have been like, okay, well, we can cut to like 1 or 2 shots of this in our documentary, and the rest is going to be talking heads because this is obviously not enough. Like, every time we see her, we should see 2 or 3 other people talking about the situation that she was in. Like, there's just no interviews. There's like 4 or 5 interviewees, it seems. And that's just, I mean, yeah, it makes it not well-rounded, and it makes it just seem like the directors were like, isn't she so fabulous, and she's going to start doing this and this, and who cares about anything else kind of thing. It's just like they spend more time, like spending more time of her being able to get on stage and people not booing her because she got divorced or something like that. Like they think that's more important than these motherfuckers made Christian Disneyland. Like, please get into that, because that is baffling.
Well, it's funny because like that idea of having so few interviewees in this whole thing that should be about various subjects trying to give their take on Tammy Faye. It's like that would be a much better movie, because when we covered the best documentary Oscar winner features of the 2010s on my pod, we tried to bring up this idea in each episode, or a majority of them, about like the main characters that aren't necessarily the subject, because like you want to like have an anchor that, regardless of their screen time, is sort of someone that the documentarian finds and is like sort of like someone who's like a perfect subject to talk to. Because, or like an example is like we covered Searching for Sugar Man, the doc from 2012 about Rodriguez, and like the documentarian found this guy who was a drunk and hangs out at this bar, who saw maybe Rodriguez once, and like, who is this? Like, it kind of like blows you away with like the screen presence, but has nothing to do with Rodriguez, right? But yeah, it's like, and this doc just has nothing to say with the people that they talk to, but it completely misunderstands, like we say, the power of documentary filmmaking, because like for someone who is so iconic and larger than life like Tammy Faye, you need to like minimize them to really like feel like you're meeting them for the first time again.
It's the type of film like they only interview people that she wants to be interviewed, and will only support her. Like at one point, I did kind of chuckle at one point where I don't remember if it's her talking about how she was bleeding and saw a gynecologist, or if it was someone about her drug addiction, but it like interviews someone and it's like, this name, PhD, and then below it says Tammy's doctor, and I was like, yeah, no shit. Like did you really need that? Like, Tammy's doctor, like, I don't know, they're talking about treating her. I think we don't need that. Like,
even this doctor was just in the room when they were talking about it.
It's just Dr. Nick, just, hi everybody. Yeah.
Hi, Tammy Faye.
The doctor is in quotes, Dr. Nick.
Yeah, that's the thing. It doesn't want to do any of its research. Go outside and talk about other people raised in Christian faiths who talk about. I don't even need, like, it would even be lazy to be like, here's another person who is like very anti-LGBTQ or whatever, and just be like, these gays don't belong in our form of religion. Like, I don't need that shit because that's just as superficial. But like,
well, you could have gotten it because they talk about Jerry Falwell and he has kids who are still alive.
It literally is just like, we tried to do our homework, but they wouldn't reach out to us, and it's like, okay, go further. Like contact more people. Doesn't even have to be related to Tammy Faye. Just talk about anybody within this type of community that she was raised in, or it doesn't have to be in California or wherever the fuck she's from. Just like,
there's the reporter Charles Shepard. I don't know if he's like based in Arizona or whatever. The guy, he's like the one journalist you kind of see with like the gray hair and like the blue dress shirt that like is being interviewed, and she has like a sit down with him, and he's like, I guess, an outsider to the community because he was like reporting on it. And in one of the articles I was reading on the sort of like lawsuits against like, and like allegations against Jim Baker, like there was like a story about how like when, I think it was Charles Shepard who like said that like when he tried to like look into the story, he was like brought into like the PTL office of someone and like a gun was brandished on like a table as like a threat and everything. They don't mention that in the movie, even though it's a very frightening story. But like, he's like, I don't know, I guess he's interviewed in the movie because he seems to be on relatively okay terms with Tammy Faye and everything, where like he gets her to sign his book or whatever, and she's like gladly able to do that. And I guess there's like maybe something in there where it's like, I guess showing how entangled these different organizations, media and churches become when like he's like trying to promote a book and she's like promoting religion with money and everything, and it's like kind of their own like opportunistic means, I guess, that tied up in there. But the movie doesn't really comment on that. It's just one scene. It's there.
Yeah, and the voiceover made it seem like when he was brought allegations about his book, the only thing he would rather want an autograph than to talk about it. And it was just like, what? No, because like I read a review that was just like, why did you only put like 1 minute or like one little snippet of that thing? Because apparently it's like fascinating to just see her just go off on this guy or something like that. And yeah, it just makes it seem like he was just like, oh, I wrote this book. Yeah, none of it was right. Oh, can I get an autograph? It's so cool to see you. And it's just like, I truly doubt that was the point of the interview.
That's a very good point. Yes, you're right.
Like he wanted to squash her in certain ways. That's the other thing too, where the narration is literally saying what's about to happen, and then they literally, he wanted an autograph. Can I get an autograph? And it's just like, well, then what's the point of the fucking narration?
Yeah.
Like,
well, and the only clip that they play of it is just like her going off, and he was just like, well, what I was doing, and then she just goes off again. And it's just like, that's like the entire documentary right there. It's just like anytime there's other person trying to talk about Tammy Faye, she just talks over them. So
I think it would have been
mad. Sorry, go ahead, Charlie.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say real quick. Honestly, I would have loved to hear other people who are Christian who share her beliefs, who even were raised by her, that or people who were Christian who weren't raised by her, but have similar beliefs, be opposed to her in some way. Like it's all obviously movies are supposed to be machines for empathy type of thing, and I watch that. I watch movies for empathy and stuff like that, but it doesn't even want to try and be challenging in the slightest way to bring in an opposing side, even if it's a side I disagree with that is like reprehensible. It doesn't want to bring in anybody that's gonna make her look bad in the slightest, or even push back. Like it's so one track minded, narrow focused, like it just too bad for her. And she got a raw hand, but like but dive into it. This is complicated stuff. This isn't just one-sided stuff. This is a very complicated, very juicy, very like nuanced subjects that again, people I talk to wrestle with this sort of stuff all the time with family members and
like the thing that she's arguing with that reporter about, I was just looking through my notes to see what it was. I think she's like professing like innocence for her husband, and it's like, well, no, your husband is guilty. I mean, yes, you're right. Some things in this movie are more complicated than you see, but it's like, no, he stole that money.
He stole that money. Why does the movie not need to take her side in that? It doesn't need to. What's the harm in? And it's because she's so involved, which is I feel like that. If you're presenting this stuff as factual, that's automatically a fault of the filmmaking to not even provide another side. It's kind of the same thing I have with, I love a lot of Michael Moore's politics, but he doesn't often go to the other side. Even if I find the other side to be absolutely reprehensible, he doesn't have any interest in seeing in meeting anybody else on the wavelength.
And that's
It's all
usually
about
the other
him.
side's criticism of Michael Moore, of course.
Exactly, which it can be justifiably weaponized against him. Like, if you're not going to be empathetic to any other side other than your own, then what's the fucking point? Like, it doesn't...
Yeah, I think to wrap up this, my main final thought is they wanted to sand off all of the edges for her so that she could be like this 2000s icon type thing, and just wanted to pretty much just make her a caricature or whatever. The fact that like her comeback and all of that, which is not a comeback, it's like she talks in a room talks in 2 rooms about her religion and whatnot, and that's pretty much her comeback. And then her downfall is, like I said before, is like she tries to pitch a show and the guy is just like, that part's really funny. Right. Yeah. And then it's like, maybe you should talk to Lifetime, and then it gets nothing, and then she's just like, what am I gonna do? I'm at home and I'm with my dogs in my home, and like I just wish we could open up our fucking water park again. It would be so good. And I'm
You
just
have
like,
a $3 million home.
Yeah. You're fine. You're fine. But yeah,
she's fine, but she's deeply sad and alone. Which, I mean, like even if this doc is a sanitized version for Tammy herself to digest at the time, and for the American public to digest, it's still frustrating and like a bummer, because like the unsanitized version is super interesting, and neither this doc or the Showalter film are interested in the unsanitized version. It's deeply strange, but now I know what the faculty and staff were talking about in elementary school.
There you go. It only took you 77 minutes, and now you finally can go, oh, I get it. Yeah. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Almost Major. Please rate, review, and subscribe to us on iTunes. Please follow the pod on Twitter at Almost Major to keep up to date with what movies we will be covering in the future. Myself, I can be found on Twitter and Letterboxd at KevBonesy. Bryden can be found on Twitter at Bryden Doyle and on Letterboxd at JDoyle. Charlie can be found on Twitter and Letterboxd at CTNash91. Once again, thank you for listening.